I'll just point out what was the original garage. The original garage came to right in this area here. From here out without the add-on. And it was in 1964 that I got my first garage to work on cars. This one right here, we pulled this building up. I didn't do nothing. Dad did it.
Just like with me.
Made my own spot where I could work on cars. I'm getting too far away from you. That was my first garage that I didn't have to share with anybody else. That was mine to work on. That's it's too bad there's no lights in there right now. I happened to take one of the wires down when we were moving trees. But then Dad decided we need another garage. He had bought a '50 Ford pickup truck and he needed a place to put it in. So he said, well, I think there's room here to put 2 more bays on the end. One of them is inside where the old office was. So he said this year he started in like the 20th of November. He said, well, I'm going to get the posts in the ground and get the roof on it. Well, if the weather holds okay, I'll get some more done. I'll get the north end filled in. So he'd come out, maybe spend an hour, maybe an hour and a half. It was cold, and he'd put on a few boards every day. Well, he kept going. He got it all closed in before the end of December. So then we had a nice place to work on cars. It was big enough, roomy enough. So put up with that until 1970 when I went into business. The big garage down here that you see, we took those apart. They came in sections. They were down behind Turner Brass Corporation. We got permission to take 2 of the buildings down. We went down there, Dad and myself, took them apart, not knowing exactly what we were going to do with them, and set them out in the field. This way. He had sense enough to take them from their standard 8-foot height and raise them to 12 foot, which turned out to be a pretty good maneuver. I used that garage right there for 20 years with my business. I guess I made a lot of money out of it. I didn't spend a lot of money. Look at the building. His total cost to reconstruct the garage, he told me, was $2,900. That included all the wiring, all the insulation, all the electrical, the concrete, ready to open.
He do that all himself too?
We did most of it. We had help with a guy by the name of Clarence Cobb. He came down. There was 21 yards of concrete that we poured for the base for the building to sit on. He says, yeah, he said, I can give you a hand. So we thought he was a fair man. Always good to his word, so we never asked him how much it was going to cost. Just that he was going to be there, so we ordered up the concrete. Borrowed a trolley machine because none of us knew how to finish concrete. We let the motorized job do it. Well, anyway, it got all done. We spent all day pouring this concrete, all of us tired out. And Clarence said, well, he said, I'm going to go up to Maury's. He says, it's time to have a beer. He said, so he went up there, and I went up there later and asked him, I said, how much do I owe you for helping us? he didn't bat an eye. He says $35. He said, and I think that's a fair price. I said, I'll agree with that. Paid him, so we needed a little bit of help later, and you know, got a hold of him. He'd come down and give a hand, but I would say 98% of it was done by Don Ehrler. He was the foreman, the laborer, the cleanup man. Wiring was put in a matter of about 7 hours. Dave Johnson, a friend of mine here in Sycamore, we used to live in Sycamore, needed a new radiator for his truck. He said, you give me a new radiator, a big high performance radiator, and he says, I'll put all your electrical wiring in and everything. And he says, we'll call it even, okay? And I says, yeah, sounds good to me. So he come down and did a nice job. We've never had a bit of problem with it. You know, it's an old shop. It's got a lot of stuff in it, a lot of memories. I couldn't think of anything to throw away. Some people look at it as half full, and I think of it as half empty. You know?
Lots of room for more stuff, huh?
Yeah, I can always find, there's always another place that I can drive a nail and put something. Because if all that stuff gets thrown away in another 20 years from now, how's anybody going to find it? I mean, you know, your kids' kids. I don't know. Some people like to collect stuff, and other people just want to let it pass by. So, I don't know. Well, let's move on. My hands are getting cold.
All right.
Phew. I gotta go.
Well, we're a little on a sequence here, but we're new at this. It's early December, and we were filming the old shop there, and it got a little bit cold for us. So we tried to take a different direction here. So we came inside and to warm up a little bit and to kind of find out a little bit more about this guy here. You know, what's important, this is odd because, you know, for us this is just today like any other, and we're trying to put something together that lasts a day or two beyond our time. So it's hard for us because we know each other, we know everybody else, to feel like we have to introduce ourselves. But we forget that whoever you are watching the tape now, you don't really know us. So what's your name?
Glenn Fizz Ehrler. What a nickname, I know.
Fizz, how'd you get that middle name anyway?
Oh, a long time ago. About 1957, I started hanging around a gas station, and I was quite shy at the time. Had a little problem pronouncing my name also. I couldn't say Glenn, I wanted to say Glenn. I didn't want anybody to call me Gwen. So, I wouldn't tell them my name. And at the same time, Clark Oil Company, or Clark Oil, or whatever you want to call it, started promoting their gasoline in northern Illinois, Chicagoland area, and over the television, radio commercials, whatever, they used a little helper promoting service. They were going to give you top-notch service. And the little helper's name was Fizz. So the two guys that owned the gas station said, well, if you're not going to tell us what your name is, we're just going to have to call you our little Fizz. And I says, well, I was too shy to say anything else about it, so I just was content in letting them call me Fizz. So it's been Fizz for a long time. Sometimes people call me Fuzz, and sometimes they don't call me at all. Sometimes they call me Ehrler, sometimes they call me Early, sometimes they call me Late. But it's been around, it's been part of me for quite some time. Will be for many, many more years.
When were you born? How old are you today?
I'm 49.
49 years old.
March 28, 1945.
Here in
3
Sycamore?
days ahead of my sister.
3 days ahead.
Yeah. Born on the south side. When I was born, the hospital was the south side of Sycamore. Of course, now as you look out, it's grown tremendously over the years. Yes, I was born and raised in Sycamore. Dr. Evans was the doctor that I was attending, you know, my mother, and he's the one that, what am I trying to say? Delivered me.
He delivered you.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite memories of your childhood, of growing up in Sycamore and growing up at the house that your dad built? What are some of the interesting things that have happened in that house that...
One thing that I'm sure everybody remembers, as a little child, I used to be, well, I always called it curious, but other people perceived it as being mischievous.
Mischievous?
Mischievous, there you go. My father was a policeman down Ehrler here in Sycamore all his life. He had an area that he kept his service revolver and the ammunition and everything up out of sight, you know, where children couldn't play with it. Well, I discovered where it was. But as a little kid, I imagine I was about 4 years old, the big boxes of shells, I couldn't, standing up on a ladder, I couldn't get them down. But there were some little bitty boxes of shells. I didn't know what they were at the time. But I got a box down, spilled it on the floor, and took a croquet mallet and proceeded to blast them off. Man, it was great. I think I did 3 boxes. And when I picked up all the shells, I missed one, and after Dad got out of the shower, he stepped on it. He didn't even bother to ask anybody else. He knew who did it. That was the first time I think I got my tan your hide. You know? Yeah, I used to. Boy. The things we put our parents through, man, we look back and it's pretty tough on us. I wonder why any of us lived, you know? I was real hard on shoes. We went and bought shoes for school. He come home, he got out of the car, and he says, I imagine that by this time I was probably 10, 11 years old, supposed to mow the grass. Well, I don't want to mow the grass. But he says, go in the house, take your shoes off, put your work clothes on, and go mow the grass. Yeah, sure. What does he know? All I got is just a little bit. I'll just go ahead and mow the grass. So I reached down, cranked the old lawnmower up, and it started the first pull. Jumped right over on top of my shoe and cut the top, the leather out. I kind of looked, and he was out that door in a minute. He says, you don't have time to change your, oh, boy was he mad. I had more than shoes, 5 minutes. Cut the top right out of them. But stick it on my toes.
That's an important thing.
Yeah. At the time, it didn't really serve a lesson, you know, but I've thought about it many, many times over the years. How very fortunate, you know. But there was a lot of stuff that went on in the house. My brother was into weightlifting.
And that's Bob?
Yeah, Bob. He was always mixing raw eggs and wheat germ and honey and everything. And he drank it, only then he left all the concrete remains in the glass. And my sister and him got into it pretty regular because for some reason or another back then it was thought, you wash dishes, you know? Well, she didn't like him because you had to let them soak for about a week. He never wanted to rinse them out, you know? So they got into it pretty regular over that. All in all, we had a lot of good memories. Dad built us an underground fort in the backyard, which there's still a board or two up there. was neat. We had our own, took one of these milk cans, like the farmers have got, the old milk cans. And he
a
took
big
it,
tank, like?
no, a little, like about this tall. And he took and made a door in it with a hinge on it and everything, took and cut it up, made a little stove. We had our own little, it was a little underground fort, maybe 6 kids could get in it. We had our little stairs down it and all hidden back behind the bushes in the backyard there, next to the garden. But because a regular stove was too large to have in there, he took and made a little wood burning stove. That's great. And a stovepipe going back up. You know, kids. There was a whole group of kids that used to hang around together. You know, all neighborhood kids. You know, we had a lot of good times. My mother went to work in 1953 for DeKalb Ag as a part-time. She was only going to go work there that summer. Well, she finally stopped work for DeKalb Ag 23 years later. And
what did she do there?
she worked in the accounting department. I don't know what exactly that she did to begin with, but when the last years that she was there, all she was doing is checking computer copies. Because what the problem was is the young people that were feeding all the information to the computers didn't know the customers. And if your name happened to be Paul Smith, maybe Paul R. Smith, she knew that the one out in Kansas bought maybe $200,000 worth of product a year. The Paul R. Smith in West Virginia only bought $30,000. Now, if those 2 Paul Smiths would happen to get the wrong bill, one of them was very happy and the other one wasn't. So all she did was check computer processing. And she said on a daily basis she would find right around $800,000 worth of improperly filed information. Because it's garbage in, garbage out.
What was her full name?
Ruth Ann McPherson Ehrler.
And she was born in Sycamore as well?
I'm not sure. I think she was born in Clare, just west of Sycamore.
And then moved to Sycamore when she was a child?
Yeah, I think that she attended Sycamore schools. You know, those are questions that I never thought to ask her when she was alive. Just always assumed she did. You know, but I can remember her talking that she had the same. Miss Gilbert was a first grade teacher. I believe it's Central School. I think Miss Gilbert was one of her teachers, one of my teachers, and I think it was a substitute teacher for you. The woman was like,
wow.
The woman was like 85 years old.
Yeah.
But I used to see her when we go to the open houses at the school and stuff. She would be there, you know. But I thought that was, how could somebody teach that long, you know? But they would bring her in as a substitute teacher for you kids.
That's something else.
And here your grandma would have been 81 years old this year.
She died in 1983?
No, December the 6th, 1984.
84.
Yeah, after about 5 years of illness. So it's not good that a person has to sit and suffer so long, but Alzheimer's eventually took over, and so the pain and suffering and stuff like that had disappeared because it's such part of the process is the central nervous system shuts down. So the pain and stuff that she suffered with a good portion of her life and stuff like that, she didn't have any, you know. And Dad took care of her right till the end, made sure that, you know, she was properly cared for, kept her at home, but it was extremely hard on him, you know. So he started a whole new life with her.
That's Don Ehrler?
Don.
Yeah.
Yeah.
just turned 80 this year, right?
Yeah, he got remarried in 1986 to a very wonderful woman that they take care of each other. You know, he's done lots of things he'd never experienced in his lifetime, and so it's good for him. It's kept him alive, kept him active. He's in extremely good health for a man his age. Extremely powerful. Guy, what a guy. He'll always be that guy. He won't know how much we love him, because we're always afraid to say.
Mm-hmm.
You know? You can always think about it, but you just don't say it. Or it's time you think it's not appropriate. But yeah, he'd be mighty proud of this building. He didn't have anything to do with this one.
He was long gone by that.
Yeah.
We're sitting in the new shop, right? That was when we built this shop.
Yeah, we moved in on October 4th of 1990. It was a dream, I think, that everybody's glad that happened. And I was very reluctant to start this project. I would have never underwent this project if my sons weren't involved. At that time, it was just Ron, my oldest son, who had been involved with the business ever since he had gotten out of school. Well, beforehand, because you always get stuck learning how to run a broom and sort bolts and all that other stuff that you really enjoy, you know. But I just didn't understand the concept of going in debt, you know, when you're making money without being in debt. So, I don't know. It's truly an experience that I've never understood. I don't know if I even understand it today, but hopefully I don't have to. Hopefully the two boys understand it, understand what's got to be done to make it work, and they can make it work. And as we go with more planning, everything I planned was in my head, that way it could change daily. And nobody knew it. You know? Nobody could tell you if you were wrong because they didn't know when you were right.
Mm-hmm.
Say so. But I know now that there's many times you can both be right. There doesn't necessarily have to be a right and a wrong. A lot of things are compromised because of the individual people you are. As they say, it's how you look at the situation. It's been extremely hard for me to understand that, because it was always my way.
Well, when did you go into business? And why?
May the 4th of 1970.
That's a pretty bold step. Not a lot of people can take it. Why did you decide to? You were only 25 years old.
I was 25 years old. I worked in numerous. I'd worked at Chevy Garage for a while, and when I was in high school, before I got out of high school, they didn't want to pay anything, so I decided I better move on. I worked at DeKalb Forge. I worked at for a while. I worked at Automatic Electric in Genoa for a while. I worked at Anaconda for almost 3 years, and they were giving me this, you'll be with us for the rest of your life, and I was making $2.03 an hour, and that was in 1965, and I said, there's got to be something else. So went out, found another job at Barbara Green company in DeKalb as a welder. I stayed there until 1970 when I went into business. I was making $3.40